Did you know that if we haven't developed our emotional intelligence, we can be negatively affected by the attitudes and emotions of people around us? Emotional intelligence, or EI for short, reveals itself in our words and actions. People with highly developed emotional intelligence are able to keep their emotions from controlling their responses.
The concept of emotional intelligence was first introduced by Peter Salovey and John D. Mayer in the early 1990s, but psychologist and New York Times science journalist Daniel Goleman is credited with making the theory accessible to everyone. According to Goleman, emotional intelligence is understanding one's own feelings, empathy for the feelings of others, and the regulation of emotion in a way that enhances living.
Before you decide you don't have an issue with controlling your emotions, or you can't regulate your emotions, or you begin to judge those around you for being impulsive or emotional, let's take a look at why emotions can get the better of us.
When an event occurs, our first instinctual response is an emotional reaction. Part of this is due to our survival instinct. If you're in imminent danger, you don't want to take time contemplating the situation. You must react quickly. Not that most of us face imminent danger on a regular basis.
Although we can't prevent these instinctual emotional responses, we can work on developing the ability to recognize and control our feelings, and use that experience to assist others in the same way. Anyone can increase their emotional intelligence if they're willing to work on it.
This course will help you learn how to define emotional intelligence, identify the benefits of developing emotional intelligence, define the 4 main areas of emotional intelligence and their related skills, access an emotional intelligence assessment to assist you in identifying your emotional intelligence quotient, EQ, begin to assess your strengths and weaknesses, identify next steps to increase your emotional intelligence. Armed with this information, you will be able to focus your efforts on improving your EQ and increasing your emotional intelligence ability.
Did you know that 58% of employees' performances are affected by their emotional intelligence score?
Yes, in Emotional Intelligence 2.0, authors Travis Bradberry and Gene Greaves state that emotional intelligence, or EI, is the single biggest predictor of success in the workplace. In addition, people with higher EI scores can earn an average of $30,000 more per year than those with low scores.
That's why emotional intelligence has become such a crucial factor in our success, personally and financially. Your EI matters more in work performance than your IQ, and thankfully, your EI can be developed.
It sounds so simple, but it's not that easy. Have you ever met someone who doesn't manage their impulses well? You might see them as flighty, disruptive, difficult, impulsive, or any number of less than positive descriptors.
I have, and I try to steer clear of them. I never know whether I'm going to deal with their calm and collected side or the person who's in a bad mood. It's like they can't control their emotions.
Typically, people who don't manage their emotional responses well are demonstrating low emotional intelligence, but they come by it naturally. The sensory information you process, sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch, start as an electrical signal that enters your brain through the base of the spinal cord. The signal passes through the limbic system first before it reaches your frontal lobe.
That can be a problem because the limbic part of our brain is the emotional center. The signal hits this center first. Rational thought occurs afterwards in the frontal lobe. So our brain gets this surge of emotion before it can try to process the information rationally. That could be a problem.
Emotional intelligence is represented by the communication between the rational and emotional parts of the brain. We may not be able to stop what we feel, but we can learn how to gauge and control our emotions when we experience a trigger event.
To clarify, a trigger event is anything you experience that generates a prolonged emotional reaction. It's often based on your personal history, so each person's triggers will be different.
Which means the people we prefer to avoid might not have full control over the communication between these two parts of the brain. They react to trigger events rather than proactively letting their rational brain work with their emotional brain to create the best response.
Since your brain's biology sets you up to be an emotional creature, the first reaction you'll experience to an event will always be an emotional one. You have no control over this part. Emotional intelligence steps in when you decide what to do with the emotions rather than letting them take over. You can control the thoughts that follow the emotion. You have the ability to choose your reaction as long as you are aware of your emotions.
The question is, how do you become aware of your emotions and learn to control the thoughts after the emotional trigger?
The first step is to measure your emotional intelligence quotient, or EQ. An assessment tool can help you identify your triggers and develop better responses. We will provide some resources for that in the last lesson of this course.
Remember, your emotional intelligence can benefit your career and personal life, so identifying triggers and learning how to respond positively to events is essential to your success.